Hey guys, Ryan Sprague here, and I want to tell you all about an exciting event that I'm going to be speaking at in Hexham, England on August 9th. It's called Cosmic Frequencies. Cosmic Frequencies is going to be an unforgettable evening of mind-expanding science, live cosmic funk music, and of course, UFOs. The event is bringing together leading voices from the frontiers of space exploration, UFO research, and science communication. Curated by the SKX Funkanauts Band in collaboration with Kielder Observatory, this immersive event features powerful live music interwoven with talks from astrophysicist and SETI researcher Dr. Beatrice Villarreal, representative of the Kielder Observatory Dan Pye, Emmy-nominated filmmaker and former executive producer for the BBC, Steve Crabtree, and yours truly, talking all about the human side of UFO experiences, with stunning celestial visuals and a special panel discussion and Q&A. This evening celebrates the intersection of art, science, and curiosity, and a journey through space, sound, and the unknown. There will also be a special VIP meet and greet after the talks. Cosmic Frequencies is being held at the Forum Cinema in Hexham, England. Join us on August 9th. For more information and to purchase your tickets, visit cosmicfrequencies.org. Once again, that's cosmicfrequencies.org. And let's get funky!
Today on Somewhere in the Skies, we are joined by John Gertz to talk about his new book, Reinventing SETI, New Directions in the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. John is a leader in the field of SETI, having served 3 terms as chairman of the board of the SETI Institute. He currently serves as the only layman on the Breakthrough Listen Advisory Board. He has published a number of peer-reviewed theoretic papers on the subject of SETI. Here is our interview with John Gertz.
You are now somewhere in the skies with your host, Ryan Sprague.
All right, guys, welcome to Somewhere in the Skies, and a welcome to first-time guest on the show today. I'm really excited for this one. We're going to be talking all about his brand new book, Reinventing SETI, New Directions in the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and the author of that is John Gertz. John, welcome to Somewhere in the Skies.
Ryan, thank you so much for having me.
Of course, of course. Now, I had the pleasure of reading an advanced copy of your book, and I'll say this, in the UFO field, SETI is often looked at as an antiquated sort of thing. There's so many of these UFO people who will tell you, John, I've seen them here. I know they exist. The aliens have already visited this planet. But for the rest of humanity who's not quite there yet or believe that, that's what SETI represents. But you have come out with this brand new book that is kind of reimagining SETI, because as we all know, they really in the past only looked at this in one way, and that was through radio signals. But we're going to dive into all the different ways that you envision a new SETI, a fresh perspective on all of that. So before we get into it, kind of, chapter by chapter, because I love how you broke this thing down. What was the impetus for the book? Tell us a little about yourself, your connection to SETI and all that, if you don't mind.
Absolutely happy to. Listen, I came to SETI first as a businessman. I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm also an amateur astronomer. So by happenstance, I happened to live in Berkeley, California, which was at the time and still is a world center of SETI. I happened to meet Jill Tarter who was the lady who inspired the Jill Foster character in Contact, and it was one of the original SETI scientists and radio astronomer, and a lovely lady who lives near here in Berkeley. And she basically met me to solicit me for money for a telescope that she was planning to build at that time, which eventually was built and called the Allen Telescope Array after Paul Allen, who donated the most money to it. But I said, Jill, you're being, penny wise and pound stupid. Invite me onto your SETI board, the board of the SETI Institute, where I can, help you, solicit more money and so forth and so on and so on. But she, in the course of a conversation, realized that I actually had a very deep layman's knowledge of the field of SETI. And one thing led to another, and I in fact was, invited onto the board, and eventually served 3 terms as the chairman of the board of the really world famous SETI Institute in Mountain View, California. I then left the SETI Institute after about a dozen years on the board, and founded a new organization with the idea of raising $100 million for SETI research worldwide. Frank Drake was my my vice president. There were 2 Nobel laureates, a MacArthur Genius Fellow, and really a who's who of SETI luminaries who were on that board. And eventually, Yuri Milner stepped up, a billionaire from Silicon Valley, and put up the $100 million. And I serve today as the only layman on the advisory board that advises on how to deploy that money. All right, so I have a deep experience with SETI over very many years, about 25 years now. But I'm at core a businessman, and so I take an entirely different look at SETI. And I try to get into the brain or the CPU or the ganglia or whatever of ET and ask the question, what makes best business sense from ET's perspective? What would be its best strategy? And to cut to a bottom line here, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in much greater detail as this interview goes on, I came to the conclusion that and frankly, I agree with your listeners and your viewers that sending signals from its own home star system is a dreadful idea. It's a lousy strategy. It's not what ET would be doing. Its far better strategy would be to send robotic probes, what you guys call UFOs or UAPs, send them here to make contact with us. And so I'll stop here, if you will, and let you ask some more questions, but let's dive into the weeds of that if you'd like.
Yeah. Oh, I like that idea of kind of, flipping the tables, and the UFOs are these probes, as you mentioned. We send probes to Mars. We send, so like we are technically the UFO to a other alien planet if there were to be some sort of life on these other planets. So that's an interesting way of looking at it.
Oh,
now,
we've sent probes already to the stars, and in
right.
effect, Voyager, the 2 Voyagers, Pioneer, New Horizon, they're on the way out of our solar system.
Right.
So we're sending interstellar probes with 1970s technology. Okay. So
yeah.
ET is certainly capable of doing a lot better than that.
I would hope so. John. Well, that's a good way of sort of starting off how you started the book. And that's with this idea of not radio signals or something like that, radio signatures, but techno signatures. Now, our techno signature per se would be something like a probe, or, the satellites, the millions of satellites around our planet, all of our space junk and all this. But you do talk about in the book this idea of techno signatures. Now, some of our listeners and viewers may not know what that is. Would you mind maybe sort of painting us a picture of that and why you decided to kind of start the book with this idea of techno signatures?
Okay, well, when the original paradigm for SETI is that we would like Jodie Foster did in the movie, put on our headsets and listen to radio beams that ET was sending to us from its own home planet. Okay, that they would broadcast to us or transmit to us their Encyclopedia Galactica or whatever it is they wanted to send us. That would be a technical signature. That would be, if we detected that, that would be a sign of intelligent life, obviously. But that requires intentionality on the part of ET. It means that they specifically are looking at Earth and sending a signal specifically to Earth. But there are lots of, but that's a very, very, very tiny subset of possibilities. The broader possibility is that we detect something, anything about ET, without necessarily them intending us to know it. A simple example would be, with a very powerful telescope, we might be able to see the city lights of their city lights. Okay, they could do that with us, by the way. With a large interferometer telescope in outer space around their planet, they could look at Earth from, if they weren't too far away as a star system, and actually possibly see our city lights. We might be able to detect large structures, artificial structures, orbiting their star. These are sometimes called Dyson spheres. They may be living habitats. They could be energy gathering power plants. But whatever they are, they could be much, much larger, very large objects that we could detect by the shadows that they cast as they go across their star's orbit relative to our line of sight from Earth. We could detect the gamma ray contrails of their interstellar spaceships, or we could detect perhaps a laser that they were using to shine on a solar sail of one of their spaceships that had spilled over the solar sail. We could detect possibly molecules in the atmosphere of their planets, molecules that are not just biogenic or like biologically indicative, but also technologically indicative. That are basically artificial chemicals, like we have, unfortunately, in our atmosphere. We could detect the spectra of it. Now, I'm saying we could detect these things, not with today's technology, but with perhaps near future technologies, larger telescopes than we have. All of these are techno-signatures, and frankly, they're easier and more likely for us to detect because the chances of us detecting a radio transmission or a laser transmission directed right at Earth are not large, to be honest. And that's why we failed. We've looked at, easily 1 million stars already and detected nothing.
Right.
1 million stars, if we consider the foreground and background stars in the fields of view, certainly at least 1 million stars. And it detected nothing in terms of a directed signal to Earth. And there's a reason why ET. Well, I maybe you want to ask more questions, but I can go on for quite some time as to why that's not. You want me to continue? Fine.
Please. Yeah.
All right. So there are many problems with this idea, this notion of ET is going to be signaling us from its own home planet. Let's start with a simple one. It's potentially dangerous. If ET were to send a robot, robotic probe, or a manned probe, and I don't believe they would be manned. I believe they'd be robotic for reasons we can get into. But whatever it is, that probe need not tell us its home coordinates. It has no reason why it needs to tell us where its home civilization is. It can give us Encyclopedia Galactica. It can threaten us. It can do whatever it wants with us, but it needn't give us its home coordinates. Virtually by definition, when a civilization transmits from its home planet, it tells us where it is. Obviously, it's pretty obvious. Well, there may be some very dangerous actors in the galaxy. And ET may know this, and it may be downright dangerous to signal, because any signal they send us, there's going to be foreground star systems, background star systems. They're not going to just illuminate Earth with their signal. So danger is one issue. Another very significant problem is aligning their transmitter and our receiver in time. Now, when I say we've looked at 1 million stars, our paradigm, our classic paradigm, is to point at a star, wait 10 minutes, see if we get a signal, then point to the next star, and then the next star, and 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 on and on and on. If they're doing the same thing, they're transmitting to this star and that star and the next star and the other star and that. The chances of their transmitter and our receiver lining up in the same 10-minute space are essentially zilch.
Right.
Okay. So then the problem gets worse too, because however many planets or how many star systems are on their target list, there's no reason why they'd be just transmitting to Earth. They have no reason to know when or how or if any civilization would arise that could detect their signal. But whatever time it takes for them, however much time they're going to devote to it, let's say they devote a billion years to transmit it to Earth. For that same billion years, they need a telescope, a receiver, dedicated to Earth. And if they've got 1 million stars, they've got to have 1 million that they're interested in and they're targeting. They've got to have 1 million transmitters and 1 million receivers. I mean, it becomes preposterous. They use up all the raw materials in their solar system just building transmitters and receivers. It makes no economic sense. Then the cost of sending a probe is much cheaper than the cost of transmitting at huge energy resources over potentially a billion years or however long they need to transmit to us. It's much cheaper to send whatever information they want on their version of a thumb drive or a hard drive or whatever in the cargo bay of a probe. Sending probes completely circumvents the problem of Frank Drake in the Drake equation called the problem of L for the lifetime of a civilization. Because transmitters and receivers have to line up also in terms of civilization times. So if a civilization only exists, let's say, for 100,000 years for the sake of argument, and then goes extinct, and our civilization is only 10,000 years old, but the chances of our in the 13.8 billion years of the universe, of the two civilizations lining up in time are negligible. But once a probe is sent, it's gone. It's one and done. It's gone. And the progenitor civilization no longer exist. It can go extinct. I mean, whether it wants to or not. I mean, we've sent Voyager, we've sent Pioneer, we've now sent New Horizons, headed towards interstellar space. They're going to go for millions and billions of years. They're gone out of our solar system. What happens to Earth in their absence is irrelevant. If we go extinct, they're still going on their merry way. They don't need the progenitor civilization anymore.
Right. That's such a good point. When we think about sending these things out and where they might end up and who or what we might make contact with, by that point, it may already be too late. Humanity might already be gone by the time it reaches something. Yeah. So, I mean, there's that whole conundrum too.
There's the problem of the lag time of communication.
Exactly.
Let's say, for the sake of argument, we get a message from a from a civilization that's in the Kepler field, which would be 1,500 light years away. Let's use that as an example. Now, to make the example easier, let me roll back the clock and imagine that that it's 3,000 years ago or that we received this information. Okay.
Okay.
I understand we didn't have telescopes back then, but humor me for a moment.
Okay.
So we get the information 3,000 years ago, and we're happy to send a response back. And what do we respond? We show them our most advanced mathematics, which would be arithmetic, addition and subtraction without any zeros because that hadn't been invented yet.
Right.
We send them our top, best-selling literature, Gilgamesh, and we teach them how to properly pray to the sun god Ra.
Mhm.
Okay, and we tell them we take great pride in the height of our highest pyramid at that point. What do we do? So we send a message out. It takes 1,500 years to get there. It takes 1,500 more years to come back to us. Okay, and so today we receive the response. These 3,000 years later, and so what is ET saying to us? They're saying, well, here's a better way here's a way to do long division. Okay, they're trying to help us, so they're showing us long division. They give us their critique of Gilgamesh. They tell us how to build a pyramid that's a little bit higher than what we've already built, and how to break this to us gently. They tell us that the sun is not actually a god; it's a star, and they don't want to hurt our feelings, but so this time lag can cause a huge disconnect in many ways.
Right. Exactly. Now, you mentioned the word messaging a couple times in there, John. I'd love to touch on this. It's a very controversial thing, and I know you've spoken about this in the past. Your sort of criticism of this, and that's METI. Now, what exactly is METI? Again, for our listeners who might not be familiar with a lot of this sort of SETI lingo, what is METI, and why don't you think that's a good idea for us to be doing something like that with this reinvention of SETI, as it were?
All right. METI stands for, there's SETI, which stands for the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and METI, that stands for Messaging to Extraterrestrial Intelligence. It's a point of view that we haven't heard anything from ET, so why don't we take the bull by the horns and we'll send a message to ET. We'll initiate the contact. I and most other SETI scientists or theorists think that this is an absolutely dreadful idea. Okay, and I entitled my chapter, I don't have the book in front of me, but it's something to the effect, I think, METI, this is, I think, the title of the chapter, METI, beyond the foolish to this dangerous, arrogant, delusional, unethical, unscientific, illegal, quasi-religious, and cultic, and downright stupid. Okay, so, and not to mince words. Now, my book, I should say, even though, let me just take it as a quick aside, my book, although being published by Oxford University Press, which is a big academic press, as you know, is actually not for academics. It's academically rigorous, but it's written with a lot of, I think, sense of humor, and it's absolutely approachable by any layman. And my idealized audience is some 30-something congressional staffer, because I'm ultimately trying to influence public policy, because I think we're utterly unprepared for contact, and that's what I want to do. Okay, anyway, that's an aside. Going back to METI. I don't hardly know where to begin with what a bad idea it is. Okay, let me start by going through their arguments. They say, well, after so many years of failure in SETI, maybe it's time to try a new approach. Well, there haven't been that many years of failure with SETI. We're still, it's a very, I say we've looked at 1 million stars for 10 minutes each. That's the tiny drop in the bucket. There are 400 billion stars, and we need to look at them for more than 10 minutes each. It's disingenuous to say that we've tried for a long time. The SETI today is so powerful that we do more SETI in one 24-hour period today than we ever used to do in a year, because of more money that we have now. Thanks to Yuri Milner's beneficence, the SETI Institute also received a big bequest recently. There's more funding, more SETI programs. There are more telescopes, using more telescope time with better algorithms. Anyway, so this is a golden age of SETI that we're in right now. And then their argument is, well, somebody has to be the first. Why shouldn't it be us? Well, the reason it shouldn't be us is for one thing, we're the newest civilization in the galaxy. That's it. Really, we are. We're the newbies on the block. Listen, the universe is 13.8 billion years old. The first rocky planets came into existence about 1 billion years later. Let's say that we're average. We took about 4.5 billion years to become technologically a technological species on our planet. Let's say it took them about the same. So that brings you down to about 8 or 9 billion years ago. That would be the earliest ET. That would be twice the age of the Earth since the earliest ET arose. Not only that, but 95% of all stars are older than than our sun. Okay, there's no question that in the billions of years available, the ET we might encounter will be eons ahead of us. The chances of us encountering an ET that also is in the first 100 years or so of technological competence are zero, or essentially zero. We are absolutely the youngest civilization in the entire galaxy. It's not incumbent upon the newbies to be the ones to do all the shouting in the forest. And speaking about the shouting in the forest, or in the jungle, maybe that's all the silence that we're encountering out there is because ET knows something that we don't, and that there really are some dangers out there. And you shouldn't be shouting in the jungle. But the people, the METIists, I call them METIists because they're really kind of a religious cult, will argue, well, we're already sending messages. I Love Lucy, left our planet in 1950, and there's no getting it back or anything like that. And the answer to that is, yes, it is true that our omnidirectional, or in every direction transmissions of television and so forth, and that leakage is out there, and there's no bringing it back. It's a whisper relative to what they propose doing. It's a really quiet whisper, because what they propose doing is using the most powerful transmitters in the world to send directed messages, not just everywhere, but to individual stars. They would be at least 10,000 times more intense and more likely to be picked up. So they will argue, but ET is so benign and beneficent. The earlier we get into a relationship with ET, the earlier we'll benefit from all the wonderful glories in the science and technology and culture and everything they're going to download to us, and all they care about is love and peace and so forth. And whenever anybody says that ET must be benign, ask them to show you the database on which they. Here, let me give you all the data right now. Silence. Yeah, that's. Okay. I just downloaded all the data. There is none.
Yeah.
Whether ET more resembles Steven Spielberg's vision of ET, or more resembles Ridley Scott's vision of the alien, or aliens, is strictly a matter of your personal taste. I mean, it's we have no idea. It could be argued either way. I mean, so then there becomes the question of how dare they? Okay, so I mean, basically, don't we all have a say in this? Why a few lonely third level, astronomers? Well, I wouldn't call them third levels, but the eminence of the people that are. I would argue that the people that argue against METI are far more eminent than the people that argue for METI, and on top of that, there are the preponderance of them. But who gets to decide what are we going to say to ET? Who gets and whether we should? Because once we press the send button, there's a basic responsibility. I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but it's dangerous. Maybe ET will not, greet us with all the wisdom in the world. Maybe they'll greet us with oh, they know we're here. Let's zap them before they zap us.
Right.
Okay. And let's smush them first. Okay. And so that's a roll of the dice that we all deserve to have a say in, presumably through the United Nations. And so maybe the Security Council or the General Assembly with 3/4 of the member states or whatever, however we decide to decide this, it shouldn't be just a few lonely astronomers, okay, making the decision for all of mankind.
Yeah.
But they argued, but what harm could ET do to us? After all, the astronomical distances are, well, astronomical. Okay. And sure. I mean, the Hittites would have argued the same thing. I mean, they would have been incredulous at the thought of anybody harming them from a greater distance than their arrows could fly. Okay, they wouldn't be incapable of imagining ballistic missiles, helicopters, tanks, and on and on.
Yeah.
And let's be clear on this. So to say that ET cannot harm us from a distance is ridiculous. They don't. Again, show me the database. There is none.
Exactly. There is none.
Look at the difference between us today and let's say a small group from the 101st Airborne standing up against all of Napoleon's great armies,
Right.
of just barely more than 250 years ago, or not even less than that. Okay.
Yeah.
And Napoleon's finest army would be wiped out in minutes. Okay, wouldn't have a chance against a much smaller force of modern troops. Okay, there's no balance between ET and us. If they want to do us harm, we're in trouble. We're in a world of trouble.
Yes, we are. Well, that's actually a good jumping off point, John, for another chapter in the book where you sort of discuss if the military was to ever get involved.
My new book, Atlas of Unidentified Flying Objects, is now available to pre-order wherever books are sold, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble and Waterstones. Explore the UFO phenomenon through 34 cases from throughout the world, with accompanying pictures and maps in a beautiful hardback edition or download for your Kindle. Links available in the podcast description below.
That's actually a good jumping off point, John, for another chapter in the book where you sort of discuss if the military was to ever get involved with SETI. Like, how could this be militarized? How could this be weaponized? What is the true danger and risk in the military getting involved? I mean, what is sort of that debate or argument you posed in the book?
Well, yeah, here's the argument. There, we in the SETI community are by and large privately funded. There's very little government money going into it in the Western world. Now, I should say the Chinese are now in the field of SETI, and they're using the largest single dish radio telescope in the world to do SETI, and that's the FAST telescope. But I have felt for a long time that NASA, I should say that NASA basically does not fund SETI. Um, uh, the National Science Foundation does not basically fund SETI. But I've argued for some time that we should stop looking to them for funding. The real funding should come from the Defense Department. Uh, because SETI is situational awareness in the military sense of the word. Well, we really should know what the hell is out there. Period. I mean, we're just, even though they're, as I've said, ET is eons in advance of us, nonetheless, it's bad for Napoleon to pick a fight with 101st Airborne, but it'd be worse for Napoleon to say, okay, troops, let's everybody put on our blindfolds and start the fight. We should know what's out there. But there's another problem here, and this is one that needs to be solved by treaty and really basically with a military or security point of view. Let's take for the moment that I'm correct and your viewers are correct in believing that ET is not out there. They're here. They're here in our own solar system. They're not just in their home planets. What do we do if? Well, let's take a simple situation that ET is benign. ET is that these probes have been in our solar system, monitoring our television stations and have learned their English from Sesame Street and their math, our Earth's math from Khan Academy and all the rest they pick up from watching this YouTube podcast and so on. And and finally they deigned to make contact with us. Now that they understand us, they've decoded us, and finally the day has come where ET and I believe the robotics of their algorithms have come to the conclusion that they know enough to make contact, and they do so in the Queen's very own English, or in Urdu or Hindi or Swahili or Chinese or Mandarin. I don't care. And the message is, again, extremely benign. We've been watching your I Love Lucy. It given us a lot of laughs, and we want to give you in return the wisdom of the universe, Encyclopedia Galactica, and it's on a thumb drive in our cargo bay. Come and pick it up.
Yeah.
Now we're in a world of trouble. The Chinese and the Americans, maybe private actors like SpaceX, all rush to retrieve the probe. Whoever gets it first gets a cornucopia of who knows what, of technological knowledge or whatever. I mean, it's we can't even imagine what would be on that hard drive. What happens if the Chinese get there first? What happens if we get there first? Will the Chinese be incentivized to shoot down our spacecraft when it returns with that thumb drive or hard drive or something? Lest the Americans receive that technological advantage that they will lack. This is these are. And this isn't a good case scenario that ET is very benign and wants to help us. Even then, the military implications are profound. This has got to be thought out now in advance of contact. And treaties need to be entered into that govern our behavior after detection.
Yeah. Now, there's a couple more approaches, John, that you stress in the book. I don't want to give them all away because we definitely want people to read about each of these, but there were two more that really stood out to me before we get to the big question of actually what happens when we make contact. We're getting there. We're inching closer. But The other big one I wanted to ask you about is this thing everyone's talking about now, everyone's using in some iteration. Some love it, some hate it, and that's AI. Now, what role do you think artificial intelligence will play in the reinvention of SETI?
Well, here's the first role that I think is really important. Um, we live in an absolute golden age of astronomy and of astronomical databases. Um, there are enormous databases already existing, and others that are coming online imminently. The Vera Rubin telescope is creating a massive database of the entire sky viewed every 3 days. Okay, no human being could possibly look at it all. Um, uh, Artificial intelligence and machine learning is the way to go in trying to determine, looking at all of these databases, looking for anything anomalous. We don't even know what questions to ask, just anything out of the ordinary. We've got good photos of the moon, and I think at half meter resolution or something like that. But no human being can look at all those photos inch by inch to see if a rock isn't really rock-like. And to sift through all those photos looking for anything that doesn't look like anything else, that looks different. That's where machine learning and artificial intelligence immediately can be applied and should be applied. And not just on the moon. I mean, the asteroids. For goodness sakes, why do we believe that asteroids are asteroids? Well, they reflect light. So our best telescopes look at these things and they see a tiny little dot of light reflected from the sun. That tells us that there's an asteroid there. But how do we know it's an asteroid? Well, we don't. We just assume that it's an asteroid because what else is going to be in the asteroid belt?
Right.
Well, any of them could be probes, artificial ET probes, or especially the small ones.
Awesome. So that's the role sort of AI will play in all this, John. But my last one for you in terms of the approaches in the book, opening the doors to the public, citizen science almost. Now, what role can the public play in this newer version of SETI as you see it? Like what role, like sort of like almost like a crowdfunding or crowdsourcing, I should say, of the public's knowledge of this stuff?
Well, look, in my opinion, when ET wants to finally make contact with us from its local probes in our solar system, it knows where to find us and reach us and knows how to make contact. In my opinion, the signal will be bright and unmistakable because it's nearby. So if it's a laser signal, it will be the brightest star in quotations in the sky, and it will be monochromatic, and so it has to be a laser, not an actual star, which is broadband in its light. So there's no question that we'll detect it. So I don't need crowds for that. I'll tell you where a crowd could come in awfully useful right now. If the UAP community, the UFO community, wants to seriously convince me that UFOs are real, I'm just John Q. Public, so to speak. Take better pictures and take more of them. Okay, I mean, one of the things that bothers me about is that there was a meteorite or a piece of space junk that flew through the southeast, I don't know, a week or two ago, and there were 30 different pictures from dash cams. on the internet, on the nightly news or whatever, it was easy to see. Everybody provided pictures. If it was only one person, I could say, maybe it was photoshopped or whatever. But if 40 or 50 people on the window seats of an airplane are all taking a picture of the city, and they're all strangers to one another, and they're all taking pictures of the same anomalous thing out the window with their iPhones, albeit it could be poor quality, because the iPhones may not take a very good quality picture of something that's zooming by. But if there are 50 of people, strangers to one another, doing that, that would impress me mightily. Okay, so that's where the crowd could probably help a lot here. That's why nobody takes pictures taken by a single person terribly seriously so far. They're too subject to fraud or photoshopping or miscommunication or misunderstanding or misinterpretation.
Well, okay, so we have the approaches to how we could possibly make contact, John. But the big question, I think, on everyone's mind is, if and when we do make that contact, do you think personally that we'll be ready for that? Or what can we do to prepare for that? Like you did mention several things in terms of a protocol, whether it's militarily or scientifically or whatnot. But
Yeah.
if and when we do make contact, what comes next after that?
Actually, in my considered opinion, it's what comes before that. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, let me explain. First of all, SETI, up to the point of contact, is pure science. But from the very moment of contact, it flips into becoming public policy. But at this point, it would be public policy based upon the enormous befuddlement of the moment. Instead, we need to sit down now and, in my judgment, convene a large group of experts in a standing committee of expertise that, perish the thought, are just astronomers. They should just be, they can have a seat at the table, but there should be game theorists, economists, military experts, linguists, cryptologists, behavioral psychologists, evolutionary biologists, and on and on. There are many disciplines that should be brought to bear. And we need to do that now so that people can start planning for every manner of contingency on the day after contact. Presumably that should be organized under the United Nations and report to the United Nations. There is a standing committee at the United Nations that studies space. The Committee on the Peaceful Use of Outer Space, it's called, but it meets irregularly. They've never taken up SETI in earnest. They don't necessarily have the right expertise. So I'm not sure that's the right home for it. But this committee needs to produce work product, and work product can be first a draft treaty, a treaty that all nations can be a party to. I've actually drafted such a treaty in my book. I've taken the opportunity to say, hey, it doesn't take a committee necessarily to draft a treaty, so I have drafted one. I based it upon the current outer space treaty, and I've adapted and adopted some of it, but a treaty should be formulated. That's one work product of this group. They can use my first draft if they'd like to as a starting point. You'll see it published in my book, or you'll find it on my website, johngertz.com. And the second thing is contingency planning. What the decision that needs to be made in advance. Let me give you a simple problem that has to be solved now. We receive a message from ET. The message is, and let's say I'm wrong, that it doesn't come from a local probe, but it comes from a star 1,000 light years away. Okay. And the message says, "Peace be upon you. We'd love to get to know you." Okay. Should we respond? Simple question. It seems benign, but maybe it's echolocation, like a bat would use to triangulate on or find its prey. We need to make a decision. Are we going to respond to that message? Yes or no? And then what are we going to respond to? And we need to know that now, before we get the message. And the reason for that, why now, is that, remember, our paradigm, or is our standard SETI protocol is we look at each star one by one by one by one, and we go around. Each one for 10 minutes. If ET's doing the same thing, they send our message. How long are they going to wait for our response, as adjusted by the speed of light and all that entails, the delay time that entails? Are they going to, if they're 1,000 light years away, are they going to wait for 2,000 years plus a day, plus a minute, plus a century? Or how long are they going to wait for our response? We have no idea. Yeah. So our best solution is, the second we get that response, to hit the send button. But we can't have done that unless we've just debated whether we should hit send, and voted that we will hit send, and we've constructed a message of return, like we know what we're going to say in return, and all that takes years to figure out. So that's why we've got to do it now. We can't wait any longer.
Right. I like that. It's like, being proactive instead of reactionary to something that might just happen. And, too, maybe they do send that message and we don't answer, or we don't answer in time, and they just think we gave them the cold shoulder, and they're like, okay, fine, we're passing them by.
They move
Who
on.
knows? Who knows? They'll move on. I like that. So I guess, John, to sort of kind of wrap up our talk on the book and the reinvention of SETI, what do you think is the most important thing about possibly making alien contact? Like, what would that mean for humanity overall? I mean, like you mentioned, having scholars and military and scientists, and let's say even theologians. We haven't even talked about religion in this conversation. Like, what do you think would be the most important thing of making alien contact?
The short, my honest answer is, I have no idea. Okay. Now, the obvious thing is, of course, I would want to know about their maths, whether they see the universe mathematically the way we do. I would like to, of course, know about their religious beliefs, if any. I would love to know about their science. What is their theory of everything, if there is one. But truthfully, culturally, maybe the most interesting. Their science may be so advanced that we can't even contemplate it. It's a little bit like trying to teach, general relativity to Homo erectus or something. We can't teach them general relativity, and we don't have a whole lot of use for their stone scrapers. We and ET may be talking right past each other in terms of science. But they, when I say that they're vastly more advanced than we are, that's true scientifically, mathematically, and so forth, but it's not necessarily true culturally. Because we might play better piano or play better basketball. And frankly, because we're so new, we have nothing to offer them except our culture. We do have something else to offer them. I should talk about that in a second. But if we tell them, ET, we want to tell you that E equals MC squared. They're going to say, "Oh yeah, guys, I think we know that already."
Little pat on the head. Good
Yeah,
job.
yeah. It's like the millionth time they've heard that one before. Um, no, we're not going to teach them any science, or whatever. But they might be interested in our music and our culture. But we can't give it all to them. We might give them a piece by Mozart, another song by the Beatles, a picture by Monet, some gamelan music, whatever, and then let them horse trade for the rest of it. As a businessman, I'm totally offended by the METIists who say, when I've said to the METIists, or somebody else has said to them, well, who gives you the right to decide what the message is? You said, well, let's be democratic. We'll upload the entire internet to that. Okay. And I say, as a businessman, go, oi, that's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
If we give them everything all at once, what impetus do they have to give us anything in return?
Right.
You got a horse trade with them. You barter. But besides culture, because I really don't think we have much to offer them mathematically or scientifically, there is something huge that we have to offer them. And that is something we should hold as precious, and something we should trade, judiciously for, because it's very important to them. And it's a reason why, frankly, I don't think that they will destroy us, even though, after they've watched our nightly news and on top of I Love Lucy, they know us to be a pretty wretched place, But they need us in a core and fundamental way. I argue in my book that it's not good enough for them to send probes. They have to have a communication system, because a probe is a message in a bottle. It goes one way unless there's some way of getting information about Earth back to their progenitor civilization. For that, they're going to need a whole communications network of relay stations, probably around every star and even in between stars, to send back. So there'll be communication nodes. It's a vast galactic internet. It's much larger than any one civilization could possibly maintain. They need us to manufacture, to launch these probes and communication nodes, and help maintain the galactic internet, at least in our sector of the galaxy. So they will need us for that. They can also use us to broadcast or transmit our own messages, because we can build a bigger telescope here, or transmitter here, than they have in outer space. ET is very advanced, no question about it. But the laws of physics or nature are the same for them as they are for us. And a viable transmitter for ET to get information back to its progenitor civilization has got to be humongous. Okay, and in the absence of a communication system or relay stations. Anyway, so that's what they need us for.
Cool. Yeah, I never would have even have thought about that. Wow. Okay, John. Well, to kind of, we'll let people know where to get the book and everything, but I can't let you go without asking, if anyone's watching this on YouTube right now, they see these two beautiful posters behind you. You are the man, everything Zorro. So I gotta ask you, what is your connection with Zorro, and what can you tell us about that aspect of your life?
Well, okay, it's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, somebody owns Mickey Mouse and somebody owns Batman. I happen to own Zorro, so I make Zorro movies and Zorro TV shows and Zorro stage productions and books and toys and games and clothes and theme parks and commercial endorsements and on and on. So that's my day job. Okay, so my office has got lots of Zorro posters on it. Here, I'll just show you around.
Oh, cool.
It's
see the costumes there. That's
yeah.
pretty cool.
So that's just my office. If you go into adjacent offices, you'll see a whole lot more of this kind of stuff.
Cool.
Anyway, so that's it. That's what I do when I'm not doing SETI.
I love that. There's the day job, and then there's the John by night, the SETI guy, kind of like me as well,
Kind
John.
of like
The
Zorro,
UFO,
a different night, a different
exactly.
night. Yeah,
It's apropos. It is. It is.
yeah.
Um, well, John, this has been really fascinating. I think, for a lot of the UFO people out there, seeing a fresh perspective on SETI and how it can contribute to the possibility of us finally discovering alien life, like I mentioned in the beginning, a lot of people do believe it's already been here. But for the rest of humanity who's not quite there yet, I think SETI is a great way to get there. So the book is a very good, I think, jumping off point for that. So I'd love to know where can we find the
Well,
book and
the book is
all
being
that.
published on August 11th by Oxford University Press. It's currently available for pre-order on Amazon, or if you go to my website, johngertz.com, where you'll find lots of more information and lots of videos and different aspects of SETI and stuff. Um, there are also links to pre-order the book there. So it can be pre-ordered before August 11th. After that, I guess, it's available. Okay, so.
Perfect. Perfect. And we'll put links in the show notes and
All right,
everything as well. Strongly suggest people go check all of that out. But like I said, John, this was a very refreshing conversation, one we don't have often on the show. So I got to thank you for that. And I have to thank you for coming on Somewhere in the Skies today.
my pleasure. All the best. Bye-bye.
Somewhere in the Skies is part of the Somewhere podcast universe. Please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. To learn more about all of our shows, visit thespu.com.